Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our series of webinars around the 6 themes of the CMI Blueprint for Balance, which are balanced recruitment, mentoring and sponsorship, promoting leadership equality, skills and career development, flexible working, and pay and rewards. The CMI network was established 50 years ago now in order to promote women in management and to put diversity and inclusion at the heart of great leadership. The Blueprint for Balance is CMI's innovative open source tool to promote diversity to the workplace and support CMI's objectives of producing the world's strongest pipeline of women in management. We're always looking for new resources. If you would like to suggest any, please do so in the Blueprint for Balance page. This network is not exclusive to women. We encourage men, to also be agents of change and become everyday champions of women at work and to help drive organizational strategies for balance. Today, we are looking at creating an ambitious personal development plan. My name is Selfawareness Escobar, and I'm Diversity and Inclusion Lead for the CMI Northeast Yorkshire and Humberside Regional Board. I am delighted to be shortly handing over to Marie Hannon-Meads, Managing Director of Professional Development Training Limited, to begin today's webinar on creating an ambitious personal development plan. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can ask them using the live chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. We shall aim to answer as many of these questions as we can today. Today's session is also being recorded and it will be shared with you later on today for those of you who have booked to attend, and also in the Management Direct for those of you who are already members of CMI. So Marie, over to you and welcome.
Thank you very much, Thelma. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me here for how to create an ambitious personal development plan. The more senior the level of management, the rarer women become. So supporting women's development and progression is absolutely crucial. As an executive coach and as a management trainer, I see this on a daily basis. So I'm assuming that you're here today because you're either aspiring to go into management or you're aspiring to raise your level of management that you're already in. So what should we be doing to further develop your management and leadership skills? Well, whether or not your organisation actively encourages personal development plans, and I am conscious that some organisations don't use this management tool, arguably having your own plan of attack with an end goal in mind enables you to more easily design, implement, and then track the progress of your career. So where to start? Well, working out a plan of attack for our careers is something that many women just don't do. In fact, often women are so busy being brilliant at their job and keeping the team together and being part of that team and getting things out of the door on time that they forget to look at the bigger picture. They forget to focus on themselves. Now, recently, I was reading a piece in Forbes magazine which suggests that there are 4 career phases that women tend to go through. The first one, starting in our 20s, is a period of ambition where women forge ahead, learning, exploring, growing, really learning independently when there is a time actually when we probably don't have dependents. That moves into the 30s, where often we hit a cultural shock, really, where career potential and parenting responsibilities crash into the organisational cultures and systems that exist at this point. And quite often, some women will sort of step off the hamster wheel for a period of time at this stage and go to flexible working or part-time roles because of different responsibilities. And invariably, they cram 5 days of work into a 3-day paid working week, but don't get me started on that. That's a separate issue altogether. Moving on to the 40s often sees a period of re-acceleration for many women, where they re-enter the workplace or they start to refocus on different career priorities, sometimes very different to what they have been in the 20s or 30s. And then finally, Forbes says that there's an age bracket for the 50 plus of self-actualization, which is when empty nesters often discover, to their surprise actually, that they are entering their peak career years. Now, I'm not giving you these categories to in any way suggest that we are pigeonholed by these decades, but really to highlight the fact that at different stages in your career phases, you may have different priorities, and that's going to impact on what you would include in your personal development plan, and from a personal and professional perspective. And that's absolutely fine, because PDPs are supposed to be personalised. It's all about you. It's all about your career. And therefore, some of the things that might shape what you put in your PDP may be any of these sorts of subjects. So at certain points, single or dual parenting and caring responsibilities may actually take over your plans for personal development. You may decide that a period of consolidation is more important than taking on new challenges. Equally, re-entering the workplace after a career break, or suddenly deciding that the work doesn't feel meaningful anymore and you want to move into a different area. All of these things are fine. A personal development plan is about you. It's about nobody else. It's your own personal development journey. So this is even more important because nowadays, I think it's probably safe to say that the idea of ladder progression through your career, which is the left-hand side diagram on this slide, where we just moved onwards and upwards in our careers, has kind of been replaced by a more lattice pathway approach, where your career may take different sideways turns, moves into different functions or different departments, and all of those are part of your growth and development potential pathways. The fact is that career progress isn't necessarily any longer measured on that sort of immediate upwards move, and actually it's entirely our own decision as to whether we decide to stay in a specialism, or maybe we go from functional to general management, whether we stay in finance or move into sales, stay in production, move into quality. Whatever those might be, it can be incorporated into your PDP. So let's look at what we're going to cover for the rest of this session then. We'll look at exactly what is a PDP, how do you go about creating one in the first place, what needs to be included to make sure that the learning is appropriate and relevant for you, what might be some key 21st century skills from a leadership and management perspective that would be useful to have in there and to be working on. And finally, how do you keep it alive so it doesn't get done as a flash in the pan and then left in the drawer and never pulled out to review your ambitions again? So what is a PDP? Okay, it's a live self-management tool. So the idea behind this is that it needs to be something that we don't just write now and forget about for forever. We review it potentially on a 6-monthly basis to see whether we're on track. It's about improving our current performance with an eye on the future potential. And that means that part of what we must do here is have a foot in the where are we now, but also a focus on the future and where you would like to be. A PDP allows you to document that development and keep tabs on what have you done, what have you learned, what have you implemented as a result of that learning, and where are you on that journey. And essentially what we're trying to do here is identify the skills, behaviours and competencies. And I tell you what, one of the techniques that I often use is to say, well, if you think about 2 job moves ahead, what might be the necessary skills, behaviours and competencies that you'll need at that point, then working your way back to, okay, what development do I need to put in place now to be on track, allows you to stretch that time scaling. And then finally, it's about something that you monitor, that you keep on track, that maybe you look at on a 3-monthly basis yourself to check that you are doing what you thought you were going to do. And as I said, a 6-monthly basis potentially with your line manager. And in terms of evaluating progress, it will be about, looking at, have there been benefits from the learning that you've done? If there have, how do you hold the gain on that? If there haven't, and actually it's no longer valid as an action point, then we rewrite it, we replan it, and we revise our personal development plan. Okay. So First things first, we can't plan our future development if you don't know what you're bringing to the party right now. So the first stage in developing your PDP is going to be to make sure that you have a high level of self-awareness. And one of the things that I use with clients is the everything disc profiling, but I appreciate that there are other personal profile tools around as well. But as a simple everything disc online questionnaire followed by a one-to-one coaching session, that allows people to really understand what are their strengths, what are their drivers in the workplace, what are their stressors, what saps your energy at work, what do you really get energized by doing, what do you love doing, and also it gives you a chance to really think through what are the values that are important to you. So what's important to the way you want to live your life? Is it a lifestyle balance? Where does family play a part, and where does it play a part if it is? Could it be independence? Could it be any other things that are important to you? Because that's going to shape what you put in your PDP. Now, couple that with a really personal and honest SWOT analysis. So looking at, what are your natural strengths? What are that you can maximize? What are the weaker areas, gaps that may need to be plugged? Opportunities that may present themselves, and threats that potentially we want to try and minimize. That combination is a good starting point. So in terms of strengths, let's start asking ourselves, what do you do naturally that you don't have to put lots of effort into, but you're just automatically great at it? Where do you enjoy the work that you do? So are those natural strengths? Where are you, again, naturally strong? In terms of weaknesses, are there areas that you've got to address? Are there personal areas? It could be confidence, it could be time management, it could be on a technical level, it could be that that there are specific exams that you're going to have to get in order to progress your career in your chosen path. From an opportunities point of view, what new opportunities lie ahead? Is the environment changing? Does that give scope for new opportunities that didn't exist a few years ago? And finally, from a threats point of view, what might prevent your development taking place? And what might throw your plans off track or out of kilter? And how can you minimize that threat? So coupling that self-awareness and SWOT analysis with a future focus means you've got to identify where you feel you'd like to go at this point, accepting it might change in 5 years' time, but where do you see your future focus at this point? So what are your personal aims and objectives? So essentially what we're doing there is setting point B out, currently being at point A, and then saying, what's the journey, what are the milestones, what are the steps it will take for us to get to that point? And then finally, and most importantly, before you start putting your PDP together, is you really must seek some feedback. And I know that this will require you to bite the bullet and actually ask for maybe your line manager, somebody to sit down and actually give you their perspective on you. But it is really essential that if we're talking about self-awareness, all we've talked about so far is us analysing ourselves, and actually it will help to see how somebody else sees you. So seeking feedback, whether it's from your line manager, from an HR manager. If you do 360 degrees, that's a great opportunity to get some feedback from your team as well. So moving on from once you know yourself, what do we do next? We need to look at the overall content of your PDP. And I think here there are 3 areas that we can kind of identify as areas for consideration. From a personal point of view, what do you need to do in terms of yourself? From a technical point of view, there's going to be skills that are relevant to the role or profession that you're in. And from a leadership and management point of view, what do we need to be the best leaders we can be in the 21st century? So let's take these in turn. Let's go down the personal line first of all. Now, I've put some ideas up there, but they may or they may not be relevant to you. These are just some common ones that I've seen on personal development plans over the years. But it could be things like you feel you need to become more assertive in the workplace, you need assistance, or you need further skills in prioritizing your workload, which could be really crucial actually, because you need to be able to prioritize your own workload before you prioritize the workload of others. It could be about handling customer relationships. Confidence is often a key personal skill. It could be something like presentation skills, but certainly identifying what are the personal areas that you'd like to work on would be part of what gets drafted into your PDP. Now, from a technical point of view, this is where you're going to need to go and do your research. So depending on the role, the profession, the industry that you're in, there may be certain technical qualifications that are required or experience that's required. So I've just put some examples there. For instance, in purchasing, the SIPS qualifications might be appropriate. In something like HR, the CIPD things might be appropriate. If you're working in production, then health and safety, environmental or quality qualifications may also be appropriate. You'll need to go and do your research to find out what is most important for your particular role. And then from a leadership and management point of view, now I'm looking at this on the basis that you've already potentially got some management skills development or experience under your belt. If you haven't, though, then you'll also need to think about including some key foundational management experience in here. So it could be things like planning and organising, delegating, understanding how teams work, motivation, all of those sorts of areas, making that step up from being one of the team to being a team leader. But let's look at some key areas that from a current day and 21st century leadership and management perspective we need to incorporate. Collaborative working is about understanding how to work effectively across function or across teams. So we need to look at how we empower other people, maximizing their potential, maybe coaching them, developing them, working collaboratively with others in any organization. Excuse me. Emotional intelligence. So managing your own emotions, really understanding yourself, really understanding others, and developing the understanding of social awareness of who you're working with. Absolutely key to what we expect from our leaders today. Looking at agility and resilience. So agility being the ability to adapt quickly to change, to feel that you're comfortable with change, to embrace it, and being nimble in adopting and implementing different changes. Now, there's something here around the taking ownership and responsibility for things, stepping into authority and being prepared to take on authority that also fits with agility. And that's linking that to resilience. The underlying theme there is about being able to handle change. So in terms of personal resilience, it's how do you bounce back from setbacks? How do you recover from hiccups? And in terms of organizational resilience, then it's understanding, business resource planning, vulnerabilities, learning from incidents, and indeed developing a learning culture where innovation and risk-taking is seen as acceptable. Okay, building and inspiring a team. We need some fundamental understanding in terms of how do teams work, how do you keep a team together, especially when they're under pressure, how do you put together a successful team in the first place, how do you develop the team as a unit, how do you keep them motivated, and then influencing skills. So I say influencing skills, I think you could also read this as potentially political skills, understanding office politics. And I know a lot of people are reluctant to think about office politics and don't want to feel that they're engaging in it. But the fact is that as soon as you're talking about influencing skills, you are engaging in office politics. And what I'm suggesting here is having an understanding of which leadership styles and approaches work best with which individuals, and being able to broaden your portfolio of styles so that you can better adapt to the needs of individuals that you're working with. So let's look at some additional things here. So, and I find that the ones on the left-hand side of the screen are often included in PDPs, Specifically, the ones on the right don't always get a mention, but actually from a progression point of view are fundamental to reaching senior levels of management. So the first thing has got to be some sort of strategic awareness. So understanding what the vision is of the organisation and how that's cascaded in terms of aims and objectives throughout any organisation. Really getting to grips with the bigger context of where your organisation operates in the environment, in the marketplace. In terms of business acumen, then, that will be understanding the external world, what's the competition, what's the scope for diversification, what's happening in your industry. And that internal and external awareness is going to raise those two skill levels. Budgetary control is often something that is overlooked, but somewhere along the line, having to manage a budget is going to make you more aware of cost cutting, cost control, financial awareness, and that's crucial to decision making, and certainly to commercial decision making at senior management levels. Looking at networking, it may be painful, but you've certainly got to consider building and networking, building your internal and your external contacts. So broadening your group of business associates and really getting to know people, even within your own organisation in different departments, different functions, spreading your net wider so that you have just an overall broader range of contacts. And then finally, visibility. I think it's really important from a women in management perspective to start a bit of self-promotion. And what I don't mean is getting a loud hailer out, getting a loudspeaker out and shouting this from the hilltops. But certainly, you know, we need to think about raising profile and making sure that people understand that we are ambitious. If you are ambitious, volunteering for higher profile tasks and really getting your name out there. So how do we put all of this together? Well, I'm going to, first of all, I really just like you to make sure that you really do understand SMART goals. And the reason I say that is because I'm always amazed at how many people say, yeah, they understand SMART goals, but actually don't put them into a PDP. So what we're talking about then is being really all of those SMART, you know, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time scaled. So for instance, what's the actual, from a specific point of view, what's the actual skill you want to develop? What is the actual activity that will help you to do this? How do you intend to measure it and monitor to check that it's on track? Make sure that what you're setting for yourself is achievable. Don't shoot yourself in the foot by saying that you're going to do something in 6 months' time, which it would take anybody 12 months to achieve. You'll only end up demotivating yourself, so make sure it's achievable. At the same time, I'm going to encourage you to also look outside of your comfort zone, so not so achievable that you can do it without any kind of extra stretch or extra effort. Let's make sure that you're clear yourself why you want development in a specific area and why it's relevant to the future. Because at some point you may have to justify the development to a line manager or a senior manager, and certainly the why it's relevant, what benefits will it bring to the team, to the organisation, are going to be part of that sales process. And then finally, let's make sure that everything has got some sort of time scale on it. So if we're setting a goal for 12 months, then we're going to make sure it's measured on a quarterly basis, but we will make sure that we've got specific timescales as milestones marked out during that 12-month period. Okay, so let's think about what we can do to be creative and aspirational to make sure that what's in our PDP allows us to do all of these things. So for starters, let's not wait for somebody else to come up with the idea of approaching us and saying, do you know what, why don't we do your PDP? Let's take charge of this ourselves, and let's get cracking on it. Let's formalize it by, you know, getting it written down, getting it typed up on a document, not just keeping it in our heads, but actually having it somewhere that we can refer to and keep track of. Let's incorporate things like stretch assignments. So taking on something that's out of the norm for you, taking on something that's going to require you to use different skills, maybe work with a different team, come up with something, a different approach to a challenge. What about things like projects and initiatives? There are things going on, for instance, at the moment, loads of us have started working from home. I know, an example of an initiative might be, let's start a newsletter. Let's start a newsletter to keep in touch with all of those who are having to work from home. But certainly put your hand up, volunteer, get stuck into new projects and initiatives. Similarly, if there's a new product or a service launch and people are looking for volunteers, that's a great opportunity to show that you're open to change, you're embracing change, and you are part of the future of an organisation. Now, I think on top of all of this, actually, it would be worth highlighting the 70-20-10 rule of a personal development plan. So when we're being creative, 70% of what needs to be done on your PDP can often be done in-house. So it can be done through changing the way you're working, or, you know, some, as we've just mentioned, stretch assignments with different departments, getting involved in things that don't necessarily require a training budget, but actually just require some time and some creativity to think through what might help you develop the experience in that particular skill or behaviour. So that's your 70%. 20% of what goes on your PDP could arguably be based on reviewing, with feedback, some coaching, looking at relationships and tied in with how you manage and build the interactions that you have across different departments. So again, that could be something that you incorporate into your PDP. And finally, probably 10% is likely to be the more formalized, going off on a training program or going off to do a qualification. So bear that in mind. It does mean that you've got a lot of ammunition to play with to go to your line manager to discuss development, because actually the majority of it can be done in-house. It doesn't necessarily need to be done at a cost to the organisation. Whoops. Okay, in addition to that, other options for us to be creative in our PDP. Spending time in another part of the business, another function. It could be that, you know, a different team has a monthly meeting, so why not ask if you can sit in on that to get an insight into the drivers, the stressors from their particular business function. Leading a significant change, something like a restructure, could be something to be involved with, and some sort of improvement project. If you're already running a team, then actually critiquing the team in terms of looking at what could you do that would instigate an improvement, and then planning that, working it all out, maybe putting a proposal to senior leadership if that's what's required, or actually just getting on with it, implementing it, reviewing it, and keeping the benefits of that rolling. Let's look at some aspirational aspects to your PDP as well. So things like coaching and mentoring others. Now, this could be just quite straightforward in as much as establishing something like a skills matrix for your team, and from that developing a training plan. But equally, you could volunteer to mentor a new starter. You could volunteer to mentor somebody junior in another department. You could certainly volunteer to coach somebody as a technical expert in your particular area. And those will all massively develop your leadership skills and your interaction, your interpersonal skills. Things like managing the introduction of a new process could be a great insight as well. Certainly handling challenging negotiations, whether that be internal or external. Again, dealing with complex people challenges can be really insightful and great learning experiences. Possibly a turnaround challenge if there's something, if there's a part of the business that's not particularly successful at the moment, taking on a new team, something like that, to turn around and actually make it a success. It's a great way of proving your managerial skills. A startup challenge might be a good option if there's something along those kind of lines that you could incorporate into your development. Taking on more people into your team might be another way. Taking on any people in people management would be a good development of your leadership skills. If you haven't already got people reporting to you, getting involved in the coaching and mentoring might be a step into that sort of people management experience as well. Trying to incorporate anything that gives you exposure to senior leaders would be great, because you're hitting the visibility as well as the development. So any kind of projects where you potentially have to report progress back to senior leadership is a great way of incorporating that skill into your PDP. And then finally, what about things like getting a mentor yourself? So looking around for somebody, whether it's in your own organization or outside your organization, but in the same industry. So a mentor who can help you in terms of your career path and understanding what are the career options that are open to you. Or maybe an executive coach, which will be more about developing your own personal performance and honing your leadership approach. Okay. So once we've got it all drafted together, and you've been creative and you've been aspirational about how you can achieve this skills development, then it's absolutely crucial that you keep it alive. This cannot be a flash in the pan, as I said, and just stored away and forgotten about. We need to take responsibility for it, and the responsibility is yours. So you may well discuss it with your line manager, but it's not your line manager's career, it's your career that we're talking about here. So taking responsibility to keep the momentum going is crucial. Monitoring progress, 6 months go by like that. So certainly, if your manager forgets to have that 6 monthly review, then it is down to you to instigate that and make sure that it is in both your diaries with an opportunity to sit down. Reviewing something regularly, then keep your eye on it yourself, so it doesn't take till you get to your 6 monthly review to realise that you haven't started the development that you hope to. So keep that review going. And then finally, evolve it. If it's not working, or if you've changed your mind, or actually now your career is taking a slightly different focus, then rework your PDP. It's not set in stone, it's not set in concrete. It should be tailored to you, and therefore, it's got to be meaningful to you. You'll only embrace it and keep working with it if it is meaningful to you. It's got to have depth to it. So what next? Well, let's face it, ambition should not be hidden away, and I have to say that so many women do hide it away, and they don't necessarily sort of vocalize how ambitious they are. And one of the first ways of doing that is to have a career conversation with your line manager. So I can't tell you, over the years I've spoken to so many senior managers, and I've asked them how they would feel if a member of their team came to them and said, right, what I'd really like to do is every 6 months sort of sit down with you, review how I'm doing, look at my performance levels, look at my potential, and then discuss where my career is going, and what development you feel and I feel we need to be putting in place. Not once in 25 years has a senior leader said to me, oh my God, I'd hold my hands up in horror if a member of my team did that. So please don't feel that you can't go and ask for a career conversation with your line manager. Managers embrace the fact that somebody in their team is keen to develop. So definitely having a career conversation is really crucial. Once you've got that date in your diary, then you must prepare beforehand. So do your research on what sort of development you want. Think about where you intend to go. What are your career plans in terms of what's the point B if you're at a point A? And make sure that all of those things are taken into the meeting with you. I'd even go so far as saying do the SWOT. You could certainly take the personal SWOT details in with you, and actually let your line manager know what you want to discuss, so that they can also prepare beforehand. In that meeting, it's essential that you explore all of the options, hence why you must come with some ideas yourself. You'll both come at this maybe from different angles, but between you can then work out what are the best actions to take. I'd encourage you to make notes, jot things down, because even if it's something that you're thinking, well, it's not relevant now, but it might be in 6 months' time, do make notes and keep track of what those conversations have revolved around. Finally, identify the actions to make progress and agree that between the two of you. You will need some support or agreement from your line manager, but then most importantly of all, you've got to commit to this yourself. This is your career. It's your pathway. It's your learning journey. It is down to you to make the most of it, keep it going, keep the momentum going, and get to where you want to get to. Okay, thank you. Thelma, I'll hand back to you at this point. Thelma, I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Marie. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yeah.
Thank you. What a comprehensive approach to having an ambitious personal development plan. Some really wonderful tips in there, very useful, really. I mean, so many where to start, being creative, being ambitious, being visible, all these things, networking that sometimes we as women just simply aren't brave or courageous enough to do, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So I've been listening keenly myself because I'm someone who I know took years and years to start networking. And also, though, another one there on the visibility I really liked, and I hope and a lot of people might find this very useful as well. I just think helping someone, mentoring, sharing your own knowledge, isn't it? Because sometimes we sit in the workplace, we don't share that knowledge. So I'm really glad to hear all of this coming out. Really fantastic tips. Our audience have a few questions for you.
Okay.
Yeah, we've had a few coming in already. So I'd like to start off with asking you, and one of the questions is, who should you share your personal development plan with?
Okay, so I guess the first person you share it with is your line manager, because you may need her or his agreement that it's viable and that these points can be implemented. But I have to say, I actually find it really useful to share your PDP with somebody outside of work as well. So maybe your partner or a close friend, somebody who can actually sit you down at certain points and say, you do what you said you were going to do. So I'd say, yes, share it in the workplace with your line manager or a senior manager, or maybe even a mentor if you've got somebody there who's keeping your career, helping you keep your career on track. But I do think it does help having somebody outside to keep poking you and just making sure that you're keeping it going.
Okay. We do have another one which links in really to that first question again. So it's, how do you measure your growth? How do you ensure that you keep growing?
Yeah. Okay, that's a fair question. In terms of measuring it, then I guess what we need to do is, whilst we have got an end point in sight, it's crucial to set milestones, which are the points at which we are checking that we're making progress. And I'm very much a believer, it's not what you know, it's what you do. So certainly at the milestone points where you are reviewing, whether it's on your own or with your line manager, I'd be looking at, what are you doing differently as a result of the learning? What have been the benefits that you've seen implemented in the workplace as a result of the development that you've done? Keep thinking about, in terms of ensuring we keep growing, then it is about pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone. It is about being creative. It is about volunteering, putting your hand up, trying something new, and going outside of the norm. And that combination of keeping track, but going outside of your comfort zone for something that will stretch you, is what will ensure you keep growing and you can measure it.
Okay. We have another good one, really. How can a mid-senior level staff take on a managerial role?
Okay, yeah, that is a good question, actually. And I think you see, I think on the basis that careers nowadays are not that kind of step up, but they are much more free and flexible and a lattice approach. Then certainly if you are already at that sort of mid-senior level staff member, there is no reason why you can't make a move into management. And I would suggest that maybe the first thing is have that kind of conversation with the line manager, so you actually raise the fact that, because they may not even know at this stage that you have management ambitions, but certainly have that conversation, and certainly start taking on different responsibilities. So if you're already quite expert in what you're doing, then stepping into some of the people management aspects of it. So for instance, rather than just attending your team meeting, which happens maybe fortnightly, then actually deciding that you're going to run over a 6-month period, if you're going to run 3 of them or 6 of them or whatever, then actually scheduling that in, and so taking on some of the management responsibilities and proving yourself. I do feel that once you take action, progress can often be made.
Okay, that's good. We have a question from Ali, who says, we're asked to write up our own PDRs. It feels uncomfortable. Is it normal for a manager to write it up? You're getting good questions.
It is a good question. And I have to say, I'm a great believer in you write up your own PDR or your own PDP. If I've got my personal development plan and I'm agreeing with my line manager what needs to go in it, it's still mine. I want to take ownership from it. I want to keep it on track. So therefore, the best way of retaining that control is to type that up yourself. Obviously, you're going to get it agreed by a line manager, but actually, I think in spite of it feeling uncomfortable, it allows you to retain control of your own destiny, really, and of your time scaling, and it allows you to then chase things up if what was agreed has not actually taken place.
Mm-hmm. So would you say it helps then conducting your own SWOT in terms of being able to write it up and owning it? Does that link in? Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think, getting your take on your own personal SWOT, first of all. I mean, certainly I would encourage you to ask your line manager to complete a SWOT on you as well, because I think that's part of the discussion. But then I think you incorporate all of that into your own personal development plan yourself.
Okay. Ellen says, I'm currently a marketing coordinator, but this is my first role out of university. How do I start aiming for a management role when I'm starting from scratch?
That is good, but how fantastic that Ellie's already got the focus of wanting to go from a management role. So if we start thinking about some of the skills that you will already be developing in terms of managing yourself as an individual, when you're just managing your own work, things like planning and organizing and the way that you interact with people and managing your workload, those can be expanded by taking on further opportunities to step into a slight management role. I mean, certainly I would, again, I can hear myself saying the same thing, but having a conversation with somebody along the lines of, this is where I'd like to go, and actually stepping up and volunteering to take on things, putting your hat into the ring for jobs that don't necessarily fit into the marketing coordinator job spec, but actually will give you an insight into some of what it would be like to, let's say, move into a team leader role first of all. So thinking along the lines of what would be the first steps into a team leader role that will be the right ones to be on track to step into a management role further down the line.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We have another question that says, I know this is mainly focused on those working, but what about your own personal life? Can you create a PDP for your own personal life too?
Well, actually, yes. Why not? I mean, I know that some people prefer to keep their personal development very separate from their professional development. But I am very conscious that some of the things that we also do in our outside of work life have a massively positive impact on what we bring to the workplace. So if you've been involved in parent-teacher associations, in sports teams, in volunteering or charitable work, some of those things are just such fantastic opportunities outside of work. But actually, it would be worth highlighting what you've done external to the workplace that bring different skills and capabilities into the workplace. So yeah, I think you could certainly create one that's separate, but I actually think if you're going to do that, don't forget to highlight what you're doing outside of work that is absolutely contributing to your future leadership development, without a doubt.
Okay. Another one says, question says, how can I keep myself motivated to stick to my personal development plan?
Okay, so I think the key thing here is that it is a personal development plan is personal to you. So provided that you've gone through the self-awareness, that self-analysis, and you've really kind of fine-tuned and thought about what's important to you and what you're aiming for, then what you're doing there is keeping it on track and keeping it very relevant to you. If it's been written by a line manager, or if it's based on somebody else's career that means nothing to you and it just doesn't give you the drive to commit to it, then of course it won't be interesting, it won't be motivational. Working to somebody else's career plan is never going to be as motivational as working to your own, and that's key. It must be you in this PDP, not somebody else.
Yeah. So is it mostly about, would you say, knowing the self really and figuring in what they want? Yeah.
I think that is a crucial part of it, because following somebody else's footsteps is not necessarily what's going to float your boat. You know, it's got to be something that's meaningful to you, because there will be times when you're doing development where you think, oh my gosh, what am I doing this for? I'm really struggling to tackle this or to work on something. But if it's meaningful to you, that will give you the passion to keep going through adversity. And sometimes you have to do that to stretch your skills.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do we have time for one more question? I think we do have time for just one final question.
Okay.
Charlotte says, how would you suggest approaching a career promotion conversation when budgets are tight following COVID?
Sorry, could you repeat that again, Thelma?
Yes. So it's a question from Charlotte, and she says,
yeah,
how would you suggest approaching a career promotion conversation when budgets are so tight following COVID?
Yeah. So I think what I suggest that we focus on here is that 70-20-10% split of your personal development plan. And if we're saying that, 70% of what could be incorporated into your personal development for your career or your promotional prospects need not cost the company fortunes. It need only sometimes require a bit of creativity, a bit of time allocation, a bit of flexibility in relation to your workload and how you operate with your team. Then actually that in itself can keep it on track. So I think I suspect that you can do a lot of personal development without asking the company in these cash-strapped times to put their hand in their pocket. And actually think outside the box for yourself will allow you to have that conversation and still feel like you are moving forwards even in these difficult times.
Okay. That's it for today's session. Thank you to everyone who joined us, and thank you, Marie, for your insights and expertise.
Thank you.
If you're a member of the CMI, you can access the CMI Women's Blueprint for Balance source tool, which has a whole range of resources to help promote equality in the workplace. If you would like to upload any resources, please do so by clicking on the link in the chat box comments. You can also find thousands of exclusive development resources in Management Direct. To log into Management Direct, just visit the CMI website. For anyone new to CMI, click on the link below in the chat box and join the community and gain access to thousands of practical development resources. The next and last CMI Blueprint for Balance digital events is Balance Recruitment, and this will be with Kate Grossing, founder and managing director of Sapphire Partners, and this will be held on the 1st December. You can also sign up to our free newsletter from the CMI. Thank you again and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.